Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to this episode of the Sinex Link podcast. It's your host, Adam Fitunji, back at you guys again with another episode. And today I am sitting down with Daniel. Daniel, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast here today, my man.
Yeah, it's great. In fact, I told somebody else I was going to be on here, another cyber MSP, and he said, "Oh, where can I watch that?" So,
That's cool, man. Nice. So, Daniel, I know you're the director of IT for Wolf River Community Bank, and you've had a pretty extensive background. I just our chats have been really awesome. Pretty, once we get into cool conversations, I feel like there's a lot of ways we can kind of get this going. So, tell me a little bit about yourself. Kind of get started with that, your background, so that everybody can get to know where you're from, what you're all about, and then we can kind of get going from there.
well, the Reader's Digest version. I was born and raised on a dairy farm that became a chicken egg farm. Went to school for computer engineering. Got out in '81 when the PCs were first introduced by IBM. Went into production agriculture for 20 years, and then right as the dawn of the internet, I went into IT consulting full time. And for the last 7 years, I've been working at a bank.
Very cool. So, what are some common threats or things that you kind of notice, banks face that maybe they might not be maybe like other banks may not, realize or may not see as like a big deal, but it kind of is that kind of thing. Like, what can you kind of tell us a little bit about that?
I mean, we're I think the bigger threat to the bank, aside from end user awareness and trying to avoid phishing and vishing and types of scenarios, the bigger risk to the bank is our customers. I mean, that is our business, is our customers. And we have to perpetually try and educate the customer so they're aware that they're not being taken advantage of, because ultimately if the customer's affected, that affects our reputation as well. So that's what's unique. I think we're upside down in customer count versus a normal business.
What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, so we've got as a bank, we've got 50 users here, and we've got over 10,000
Oh, I see what you mean.
customers. Whereas if I was a $300 million corporation, I may have 150 employees, but I may only have a couple hundred customers.
I see what you mean. Um, so like how do you kind of see like emerging technology such as like AI and all that kind of good stuff kind of impacting cybersecurity in the future?
We've had this discussion,
Yeah,
and
off camera though.
off camera. So, and I was reading an article on whitewashing of AI by a technical writer here a couple of days ago. AI is not without humans in the back end, more so than most people realize. It's just fancy programming, and it still has a bias. The one thing that's happened is, and after I've seen demonstrations of people who know how to use the large language model, is that you can have a very refined script and with not a lot of clerical errors after you've proofread it, but then being able to redo that script based on a potential audience and do that in such a short amount of time with such polish is crazy. So I believe end user victims for phone and phishing is going to require a little bit of more awareness, and especially if they start duping voices, especially these grandparent scams where they'll if they can mimic a a person's voice and hit a vulnerable person and they recognize the voice, that makes it even worse. So I think it's going to affect the end users more than the corporate world, but certainly it puts polish on the emails.
Yeah,
So,
no, for sure. We were just talking about this with someone else, like how emails are looking so goddamn good these days. So it's like,
but on the other hand, to the flip side of that coin, if you have the right defenses in place that are using that same type of automation, they should be able to detect the nuances of a computer generated response and they should see patterns and flag it accordingly. So it's a cat and mouse game. The bad guys are utilizing it faster than maybe the good guys are implementing defenses, and the good guys have to be a little bit more proactive about it.
So what key steps do you feel that companies need to take to be able to stay ahead of this cat and mouse race?
The biggest one is end user awareness training, and don't trust anybody. We just reissued our guidance on trying to verify customers over the phone or remotely. And then if a customer is legit, they should know the information. And especially for a bank, AI, large language models can only know what's in the public domain. They can't know what's private or what just happened in a bank transaction. That's not public knowledge. So if a person on our side is not coaching and is asking specific questions and the end user can't provide the answers, and that includes potentially a chatbot, it's going to fail. And my argument is that if you're being called by a chatbot or phished, they're not going to know the specific information. And if you follow your training, you will defeat it. It's the people that are looking for, it's the weakness of, I believe, certain older people, lonely people, people that are looking for a friend, validation. And so that AI type presence can present itself in such a way and learn and react, especially if there's a human driving behind that. They can pick up the nuances and redirect the responses. And a vulnerable person who's looking for that feedback just is the target.
Interesting. No, it's. Do you feel like it can? I feel like it can also happen with younger generations. No.
Well, it probably is happening already, but not AI. I mean, the problem is you have influencers, and the influencers aren't necessarily the most knowledgeable people.
Yeah.
They're people with the most people, the biggest personality. Are you an influencer? You could be. I'm never sure if you are actually real. So yeah, if young people are in that same category, especially younger people that don't have the maturity or the understanding of the real world, aren't skeptical and are willing to believe what they want to believe. If you can target the generational conversation, yeah, they could be very vulnerable. And I know it's certainly we see it affecting politics.
How so?
Well, I mean, I think maybe the last election cycle, maybe the last two election cycles, it certainly seems to be affecting geopolitical divides as far as, say, the war in the Middle East or the Ukraine, or how do we feel about people in, say, Asia? Younger people don't have a tendency to understand the history and the geopolitical impact of all the things going on, and to realize that what they may see in from an influencer, for someone who has probably even less knowledge but is a person they want to listen to, the world is complex. It's not a simple 128 characters. It's not a simple I have an opinion. For every opinion, there's an opinion on the other side. And the problem is it's become so black and white divided when actually the whole world is probably more gray.
Are you a big social media guy or no?
I'm here.
Well, that's true. But do you spend a lot of your time Sure.
I have a Facebook account that I haven't logged into for 5 years. I have a LinkedIn account that I go into because everyone thinks they want to be my friend, including Microsoft. I yesterday had somebody. I have so many people that I'm supposed to know that I should supposedly have their names validated against their phone numbers in my smartphone. And last night, my phone lit up with a group chat and no names. It's like, what did I miss, and who is this? It turned out that a classmate from 40 years ago at college. We at college we were all on the same floor, on the same side of the floor, and we were all friends for 4 years. And one of them passed away, so one of the people who apparently is keeping track of all of us sent out a group chat, but I don't have his name in my contact list, so I had no idea.
You're like, who's texting me?
And my phone was going nuts. And like, I guess I'm part of social media. It'd be nice to know who I'm talking to. And finally, I was able to put some of the conversation together. And people I really literally hadn't heard from in 41 years. We were reconnecting. But yeah, no, I'm not a social media. My wife is, not me.
Yeah. No, it's crazy because there's like just so much information overload that like you can get hit up in so many different ways. I mean, hackers are getting so sophisticated, and like I see even like certain ads and certain things that look sketchy, and I'm like, I don't even know if I want to do anything with this. So it's definitely shifting the way the marketplace works. But I'm curious from your perspective, how do you kind of approach the balance between like all these new security measures and these new technologies that you have to kind of work with, and also making sure end users are stay productive and their convenience factor is still a thing?
So I'm bringing 20 plus years of experience to this job before I started it, and helping recover networks from one person up to hundreds. The basics of security are the same. The patching cycles and the vulnerabilities. If you can find an automated process to patch and fix your firewalls, your IDS, your endpoints, the endpoint, the weak point is still the end user. And so we do here continuous end user training. But then when we do that, and testing, but then along the way, we also recommend that what you're learning here on the job, take it back to your family. Instead of talking about politics on Thanksgiving, talk cybersecurity.
I don't think I've ever had anybody say that.
Well, you got Black Friday and people are
Like we're
looking for
sitting on
deals.
dinner. Hey guys, you want to talk about cybersecurity? No, 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 no one cares.
Let's talk about how grandma just lost my inheritance. It's like,
Do you find that like people actually take those trainings and actually run with them, or do you think like most of the world's still not taking it as seriously as they should?
it's the problem is that you get the training inside the business more than likely. I don't think it ever fully reaches home to the private residents. So what ends up happening is we see people in our building that are super sensitive now to emails, correspondence, files, attachments. Does that make it all the way home? It probably makes it home for them, but does it make it home and then spread beyond to their spouse, their kids, and relatives? And that is what we got to try and work on next: is how do we get them to be evangelists as well? Because it's usually I'll hear stories where our employees, their in-laws, they know somebody, a relative that's been impacted.
Yeah, and then
I've
you're
got a
like,
mother. I got a mother-in-law who used to work for a bank, and I literally had to take admin access away from her PC. 6 months ago, she called, and it took me and my wife literally 4 hours for her to finally admit that she fell victim to a phone scam and gave away bank routing numbers and everything. It's like, oh my God.
Oh God, jeez.
It used to work for a bank, and I can't tell you in the last 30 years how many times, especially in the last 5 years, how many times she's allowed people, when the alert came up on her PC, to call that number and let them connect to their PC. It's like, seriously? You're going to do this again?
That's
So
insane. Did they drain her out of her cash or like?
she has managed to avoid being totally victimized.
That's good.
If it happened, the last time it happened, she was at the door of the bank that she banks with at 8 o'clock the next morning and closing accounts. And so, but I can tell you the father-in-law and the mother-in-law both have had compromised credit cards. And my wife, who's retired now, spends as much time, I would say almost every other month, she has to stop a credit card for her dad or her mom and get it reissued. It's like, seriously? It's like,
Non-stop issue. That's hilarious. Um,
so yeah, it doesn't seem, I don't know. I don't know if they're lonely or why. You try and tell them, she's on Facebook. You only need only one recipe for red velvet cake. Not everyone's your friend. and, and please don't tell everybody you're leaving on vacation a week before. Tell them when you get back.
that's hilarious. Yeah, it's. I mean, it's unfortunate. It does. It kind of hits people right at the core. I've even had it happen to a good friend of mine who like runs a ton of Facebook ads, and he got an email that said, "Hey, your Facebook ad account got banned. Just click here," and it seemed like a legit Facebook login, everything, and he fell for it. So that's why I asked you, like, do you really think it's just for the older? Because I like, and this is somebody who's in tech, very well sophisticated. Sometimes
Well,
I'll get phishing emails and I'll look at them and be like, "Whoa, this is like well made."
well, and to your point, I mean, people who have grown up with smartphones and texting, they'll mindlessly text back and forth and not
Without
think
even
twice
thinking.
about it.
Yeah.
I can tell you a couple of years ago, I had somebody who smished me, he texted me, and I figured out what was going on right away, and I played along. I had time, so for about an hour and a half, I played along with the guy. I've also been the recipient of the phone call where people have tried to, told me my computer's infected, and uh, I have a skill set at least where I could flip up a virtual machine for them that was
Mhm.
isolated, and I let the person log into a brand new Windows PC virtual and let
Just
them log on, and I
roll up.
played along, and I had my wife and kid there listening on speakerphone, and they were rolling on the floor. Let's see how fast. Let's see how much of his time we can spend. And we had him on the phone for over a half hour before he
Until what?
finally
Until he
gave up.
gave up.
He finally gave up, and then you hang up on him, and then he calls back. He says, "Why do you hang up on me?" I said, "This is a scam, and yeah, but your PC's infected." I said, "Well, no, I deleted it." And then it's click. So I wish I had more skills to the point where I've heard the stories where people have actually sent back malware back up the stream, but apparently there's some issues with that if they're in the U.S. So maybe it's a skill I don't need. It
It's funny that you actually went with the whole thing. You just kind of spent time with them, just out of shits and giggles type of thing.
was a Saturday. I had time.
Like, why not? So quick, final question. I appreciate you for hopping on the podcast. What type of advice do you give for people kind of looking into IT security as a career, or trying to advance themselves, or trying to learn and indulge themselves in all this information? Because it seems like it's super overwhelming these days. There's so much to keep up with. Like, what would you kind of tell your, I guess, self like 20, 30 years back if you could visit him or meet him once again?
I laugh when my sister-in-law said that her son was going in getting a cybersecurity um, training certificate, and I said, it's a good career. It's good for auditing. It's good for white hatting, a purple team, whatever. It's a skill, and I've seen effective people do it very well, and it exposes the flaws and the holes. But then when my sister-in-law tells my wife, well, he's doing what Dan's doing, it's like, if you're in cybersecurity, you're in a siloed profession to start with. If you're going to secure a network, you don't really want to be siloed. You don't need to be a professional in any one or super skilled in any one of the arts in cyber and network in IT. But you need to understand the big picture on how it all fits together, because the bad guys look for a flaw in the infrastructure, not just always the same place. So you've got to know where all of the potential gaps are, and to have that full understanding of the network, of how the data flows. Um, and I was lucky that over the last 27 years, I went from single PCs to networks to internets to wide area networks, and got to see Code Red back in 9/11, and we learned firewalling and all the different protocols and all the different potential places where you have gaps. And so that's the advantage I've had, and I built up my cyber defenses and my security stack based on that. And then the other thing is, I don't rely on any one solution. I look at multiple solutions so that I have multiple opinions on all the different data that's going through the network. And then the other, if you're going to hire an MSP, you should have enough wherewithal, enough knowledge to know how to fix it yourself, but not enough bandwidth to do it. And then interview the MSPs based on what you know you need done. Don't just hire an MSP.
What's the main, like, how does one kind of keep up with, I guess, all the information overload? Do you have like a specific place that you kind of go to and like to read on like newsletters or anything like that?
So I've got, in my case, because I'm a financial, so ISAC is out there for all different disciplines. We're in the financial services ISAC for information security sharing. Um, if you manage to get your alerts and tickets and compromise issues minimized, then you can start to proactively start reading the news feeds. I think a lot of times I hear of people that are so overwhelmed reacting that they have no chance to proactively figure out what's coming and then tune. They're too busy reacting that they have no time to tune.
Yeah, I mean, because like it's better to be proactive than reactive, especially in this industry for
So yeah,
sure.
I mean, I get I get to my inbox, I get CISA, I get FSISAC, I get in my SIM tool, I got threat feeds there. CrowdStrike sends me threat feeds there, and literally I have enough time to glance over them, and then enough understanding of what's in my infrastructure to know what affects me directly. But you've got to literally get rid of you've got to work ahead. You got to work extra hard to get ahead of the noise, that you can start absorbing the news as it comes in, to be proactive.
Totally, totally. Daniel, I appreciate you for hopping on the podcast, my man. Where can people find you?
Dan at wolfriverbank.com, Dan at dbettle.com, or you can find me sitting on my back porch in Green Bay.
Just go start stalk you and find you in Green Bay. Huh? That's hilarious. Well, I appreciate you for hopping on, man. And everybody that's watching, thank you so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed, please remember to leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more content. And we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Have a great day.